Daryl LeClaire. Daryl LeClaire is the local contact for Portman Holdings Third Lake. So Daryl, I'm going to make you, everyone sees you, and go ahead and take it away.
Matt, thank you very much, and thanks everybody for joining us today. I'm going to kick it to Ken, who's the chair of Third Lake, and then we'll start rolling into our presentation, and then we look forward to the Q&A after. Ken, would you like to take it from here?
Yeah, well, welcome everybody. Thank you for having Third Lake and Portman on this call. We're very excited about the project, and I thought what we do is, if you want to flip to the next slide, we have a short agenda here. We're going to walk through a little bit of background on Portman and Third Lake. We're going to talk about sort of the community and the local understanding that we have for this project. We're going to talk about our design vision, how we've already engaged the community, what we've done to date, and what we plan to do all throughout the process. And then we're going to wrap it up at the end, talking about the overall project. And so I'm going to turn it to Hunter Richardson now, who's an executive with Portman Holdings in Atlanta, and he's going to give a little bit of background about our team. Hunter, are you on?
Okay, is that better?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, sorry about that. Got to pay attention to the mute button here. Thank you for the opportunity this morning. We have been working with Third Lake and with Daryl and Echelon for several months here now on this project. We're excited to have the opportunity. We actually put together a team of Portman Holdings, Portman Residential, and Third Lake Partners to go after this RFP. We have been around in terms of Portman since 1957, Third Lake since 2013, and Portman Residential has been added to the mix here in the last 12 months. But between the three of us, we've done over $15 billion worth of real estate development and have done virtually all product types. And so we're very accomplished. The Portman entity started doing development relative to urban revitalization in downtown Atlanta in the 1960s with Peachtree Center, went on to do Embarcadero in San Francisco, Renaissance Center in Detroit, and others. And so we are very accustomed to urban redevelopment and basically revitalizing the local communities that we're in. To round out the team, we partnered with Echelon, who you're very familiar with relative to Daryl and the Carillon project just in St. Pete there. And we also have brought in Piper Sandler to help us relative to the financing and public financing. They've basically done over $20 billion worth of public financing. And so they have been instrumental in advising us. In addition, we decided to bring together 3 design teams to work on this, so that we brought some different fresh thinking relative to what could happen at the site. HKS basically has 30 offices worldwide and has basically done all product types. 5+ Designs out of LA, and they've done a lot of entertainment destination work. And then Bayer Blender Bell out of New York, who basically have done a lot of residential and a lot of stadium redevelopment as well. And so we brought a fresh look in terms of how we put these together. And we'll go to the next slide. And this is just a quick rundown relative to our involvement with local jurisdictions. In addition to Atlanta, San Francisco, we've also worked in Charlotte, Salt Lake City, San Diego. And so we are accustomed to urban revitalization, and we try to come in and work to find the right mix of product and the right sort of density of product to blend in with the community. And with that, we've done a lot of work to figure out how to integrate this project into the landscape of St. Pete and make it a part of the fabric. With that, I'm going to turn this back to Ken, and we'll talk a little more about the history of the site.
Well, and again, I want to thank everybody for participating. I noticed that there's almost 70 people on this call. So to the extent that some of you were on the call last night with the city. You're going to hear a little bit of a repeat. But I'll tell you that when we thought about redeveloping the Trop site and submitting an RFP or submitting a response to the RFP, there were several things that were common threads throughout our thinking about what should we be looking at with respect to the development. And I think many times developers come in and just say, we have a blank slate, let's just pack it full of everything that we possibly can pack it full of so that we get the most density, the most FAR, and it's all about just churning capital to get an IRR. And I will tell you, as somebody who lives in this community, that's not the way that I look at the world. I've lived here since 1976. I moved here when I was a little kid. I was 4 years old at the time. I grew up mainly in Pasco County, but I remember this site when there was no baseball stadium, and I remember it when they built the baseball stadium. I told somebody recently that I went to the first concert ever in Tropicana Field. It was a Billy Joel concert in March of 1990, and so I remember what it was like to have that debate about, do we need a professional sports team? Do we need to have this site redeveloped? And so I remember going down here as a kid in the 70s and in the early 80s and really looking at this community and what it was. And it was a thriving African-American community. You had historic populations in Methodist Town, the gas plant, the 22nd Street community. And the reason that I know about those things is not because I read about it in a newspaper article in what was then the St. Petersburg Times. It was because I had gone down there as a child. And my parents brought me down there, and I remember seeing these great communities, and it was a real shame to watch what happened to those communities get displaced. And I saw it happen firsthand. And all those communities, Campbell Park, Melrose Mercy, Deuces Live, the historic Rozier Park, all those folks that live there. I mean, you're talking about over 250 buildings, nearly a dozen Black churches, 30 African-American owned businesses were all completely wiped out. And there were a lot of promises made to those populations to say, even though you're going to move, you're going to be taken care of. We're going to create permanent bridges to prosperity, permanent bridges to work, and permanent bridges to education and economic development. And I got to tell you, honestly, it just never happened. And I'm not sitting here pointing the finger at a particular mayor or a particular government official, but I'll tell you, there was a lot of dialogue. There was a lot of real pent-up enthusiasm about getting a sports team. And I fear that what played out was people forgot about the people that used to live there. So as we think about this community and think about what we want to do with this park, with this historic piece of land, with this ballpark, it's critically important that we're always looking at what happened before to inform what we should be doing today, and then what's going to last for the next 10, 20, 30 years, because this is not a 5-year project or a 10-year project. This is a transformational project that's going to change the fabric of this area for the next 50 years. It's going to outlive, maybe I'm not the oldest or the youngest person on the call, but it's going to outlive me. I think it's going to outlive a lot of us on this call. So we want to do something that is going to have that historic impact and that historic change. So the 21 guiding principles that the city laid out are things that we are adhering to. We take them seriously. It's everything that we think about when we think about developing this site. And so we want to promote inclusion and seamless connectivity to all those different communities that are surrounding this ballpark site. Next slide. And so with that in mind, HKS is our architecture team. They've developed sites all over the world and some big sports stadium sites as well, where they were dealing with communities that had been displaced previously, but they thought about how to thoughtfully integrate a new, whether there's a ballpark or not, we still want to integrate these communities together. And so HKS is very good at that. And I'm going to let Eric and Shelby talk a little bit more about that. So guys, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. This is Eric with the HKS, and what you're seeing on the screen right now is an end product of the master plan that the three firms came up with. It's the storyline that Ken was referring to, the Booker Creek reestablishment, the integration of the old city grid back into the fabric of the city. We picked up on some of those ideas. We want to make sure that we have inclusion of all types of spaces. So we have little bit of creekside living, activity, cultural hub along the creek. We also have the entertainment and retail plaza that integrates with the stadium, and may be an arts district if the stadium wasn't there. Mixed use, high-rise housing, as well as low income and affordable housing. The city streets allow us to connect to the south side to pick up the neighborhood of Campbell Park and the medical district. It allows us to bring in the west side, the warehouse district, and Deuces Live underneath the highway, the elevated highway there. That elevated highway could be a very cool art display underneath, and it actually integrates with the stadium project. So by tying all of these things together, we're creating accessibility, we're creating multi-levels of economic development, and we're tying in the art and history along with the Edge District and the Central Arts District to the north. If you go to the next slide, please. We looked at, Ken mentioned the 21 guiding principles the city issued, and those align with HKS's principles of design and the Code Top 10, the AIA's Committee on Environment Top 10 initiatives. And they deal with things like the arts and the culture, what's giving back to the community, the social economics of the individual development. They deal with healthy lifestyles. They deal with wellness, creating the opportunity for Pinellas Trail to expand, looking at mobility around the site, be it not just vehicular and transportation, but pedestrian transportation as well. I-75 was brought up in a previous conversation. We looked at whether or not you can and can't lower I-75. We believe there might be some challenges there, as we've heard from the medical community as well. But we want to glorify I-75 and treat it less like a 4-lane road and much more like a boulevard that has a pedestrian storefront feel to it, that allows people to come out and engage in it a little bit. Still need to provide the access to the medical systems that we know are there, but we want to make that an enjoyable experience as well. We looked at smart city initiatives. Those were also in the guiding principles from the city. Any development these days is heavily invested in technology and renewable energies. So we are looking at those alternatives and opportunities. Very difficult to go into in depth in the time that we have, but they are definitely a forefront of the development, as well as the community benefits and what we see coming out of that in the future. Shelby, you want to talk about sustainability and wellness a little bit more?
Sure. Yeah. And as we look at sustainability, it's much more than just being green. It's also, it's about the wellness of the community. And really with this one, we're at an advantage because we can look at this as a whole district and have a lot of impact that's broader than just one site, one parcel, one building. And, really tie it in with St. Pete and your guys' goals towards sustainability in the future. We look at integration, the community, ecology, and probably most importantly, things are rapidly changing. It has to be able to change and adapt and flexible. So with the 21 guiding principles and the smart city, we take access to food and access to education, jobs, transportation, and parks are extremely critical, and it has to be multi-generational. And then, as we get into historic connections in the arts, this is where the culture meets the city, meets the history, and I think this is extremely critical. And this isn't anybody coming in from an outside design or outside perspective and creating this. This is a local vision. It's a local artist. In the center of the focal point, right next to Booker Creek, we have a cultural hub, which acts as the anchor to the entertainment district right next to the retail center. We have an amphitheater, which is taking the space right next to the area that needs to be cleaned up next to Booker Creek. So there's elements of we tie into all of this, and Harvey's going to tell you a little bit more of how we integrate in with live, work, play.
Thanks, Shelby. This is Harvey with Portman Residential. We've outlined a plan that is truly comprehensive, offering space for various end users and promoting a 24/7 urban environment in St. Pete. While we believe this program makes the most sense based on our current progress, one thing we know for sure is that it will change as we continue to receive feedback from the market and the community. The residential product will provide for a variety of family sizes and income levels, with somewhere around 3,000 to 4,000 homes planned. The office space is targeting a range of users from large corporate tenants to small business enterprises. The retail will be in the form of a newly created village and on the ground floor of the larger users. We're planning a tech and research-focused campus envisioned for educational and healthcare users to help drive innovation in the research and development activities. We're planning a 400 key hotel with 50,000 feet of meeting space. Also, as Shelby was outlining, significant park and recreation space with the revitalization of Booker Creek and nearby open spaces. We've also, of course, planned a 30,000 seat ballpark should the Tampa Bay decide to stay. And the non-ballpark option, we're more or less extending the warehouse and arts district to create a creative arts and manufacturing district within the development. Housing is obviously a major part of the plan, and I know a very important element to all the stakeholders. Our plan is to have a diversity of housing products from low rise to mid rise to high rise. The diversity of product allows us to allow for diversity of incomes, which will create a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive community. Housing will be available for all family types and sizes. Affordable housing will be a major component and emphasis of our plan, with really as much affordable housing as possible, not only for rent, but also for sale. But we really think of this as more mixed income. The affordable elements will be woven seamlessly through the master plan and be indistinguishable from all the other housing types. The development and each building will be intentionally planned for a wide mix of incomes, which is typical for most Portman communities. From a phasing perspective, our current plan is to start at the northeast corner and connect to the street period to the north. And then assuming the rates stay, continue to redevelop the urban ballpark district. We're thinking that the build out will take 10 plus years in 5 distinct phases. Again, something we know for sure is this will change as the economic conditions change and the community needs change. But now I'll hand things back to Ken Jones to continue to talk about our goals for community engagement.
Thanks, Harvey. So on the community engagement piece, I do think it is the centerpiece of any successful development, because for anyone to come in, and again, I'm local and a lot of our team is local, but obviously we've got other participants that haven't lived in St. Pete their whole life or Tampa Bay. And so for us, it was super important to not only have myself and Daryl and some of the other team members talk to people that live here, but also have our partners talk to people that live here. So our pre-engagement, our pre-RFP engagement efforts included, talking to more than 36 community leaders, both in the church leadership, government leadership, business leadership, community groups. We did that over the course of several months and sat down with them for dozens of hours talking about what was their vision of what they wanted to see on this site, and also what was their experience. How did they view that site when they lived there? Because some of the folks we talked to actually grew up on that gas plant site. They've got a very good perspective on what used to be there. And I think a key to sort of making sure that you have a successful future is looking at your past. You can't always look in the rearview mirror, but success leaves clues. And then things that are unsuccessful also leave clues. And I think that taking a look at what was successful and what was unsuccessful is what has informed us as we go forward. So, for our planning stages, we've identified project goals. We will appoint a dedicated community outreach team and developer representative. We will have in-person and virtual town halls. We will have community visioning sessions. We'll have developer days where the developers will be available to talk to anybody in the community that wants to come in and have a conversation about site planning and programming. We plan on doing extensive surveys. We want to reach out to every varied organization within the community. And we want to establish and refine communication strategies. This is a very iterative process. It's just not going to be a one and done. It's going to take a lot of time to get this done. So we're very committed to it. We've already spent thousands of hours. We plan on spending additional thousands of hours. The final piece on community engagement, I'll say, is while we'll have affordable housing and we'll have accessibility to different types of communities, this is not just about giving somebody a cheap apartment to rent and checking a box for affordable housing. That is important, but what I think is really more important is making sure that you're providing generational wealth and educational opportunities to communities of people that have not had that up to now. I think that was the promise 25 or 30 years ago, and it never got fulfilled. So our view of this is, in the development stage, we're going to have job training programs to provide ample inclusion within our labor team, both before, during, and more importantly, after the project is completed, we'll have predetermined significant local minority and small business enterprise inclusion targets. We'll have community strategies to make sure that those communities understand what the opportunities are. And this is not just about getting a construction job. This is about having tradeship and apprenticeship programs so that once we're done building this, people have got permanent life skills so they can go from, early stage education, and then they get a permanent career where they have a meaningful job that imparts economic opportunity to their families. And so those are the things that we think about when we talk about this redevelopment. We'll have outreach to schools to make sure that these educational programs, again, that they're long lasting. They're just not, this is not a one-trick pony type of a project. This is going to be something that lives on for decades to come. On the operational stage, we will have affordable retail and office space for local entrepreneurs. That's something that we're working on right now. As many of you know, we were awarded the MSC redevelopment by the city of St. Petersburg last month. And so we're working right now to rehab and build a new municipal services center, but then rehab the old center so that there's about 120,000 feet of affordable office space in downtown St. Petersburg. We're going to work with youth and community adult education centers. We're going to have continuous community newsletters to reach out to people to get that continuous feedback loop. We're going to have free and affordable fitness classes. We'll have communal spaces. We'll have opportunities for artists and historians to program the district. And I think depending on whether there's a stadium or not, some of those opportunities may be enhanced, especially in the arts district. And then I think a big factor is connectivity to the surrounding neighborhoods. If you look at our schematic, you'll see that there's a connectivity to the south side over I-75, over I-175. And that really is important to connect all these communities together. This last slide, I won't read everything on it, but you can read it at your leisure. I'm sure you already have, but all these different factors are super important for us, from small business to jobs to the arts to mobility and history and sustainability. And if we're so fortunate to be chosen by the city, we look forward to working with the chamber and all the constituencies in St. Pete to make this a successful project. So thank you for the time today, and we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Great. Thanks so much, Ken. Really appreciate it. Great presentation. I'm going to open up to the floor for questions. We got about 10 minutes before the next group comes in.
Hey, Matt, while you assemble those questions, I'll ask the first question. And first of all, say thank you to our presenters. Well done, Ken and team. And you did a great job keeping Daryl where he needs to be, which is off a little bit. So we did hear his phone call. So that's nice. But thank you all for an excellent job of envisioning our community for us and the opportunities ahead. It's very clear your passion for our community. Thank you for that. My question would be, the Rays Stadium itself is oriented at the far west of the acreage we have. What thoughts did you guys give about the stadium location as far as being closer to a lot of the rest of the downtown here? And I didn't hear that discussed much about just the orientation of the site and the stadium selection part as well. Can you just go into that a little bit?
Yeah, I'll start quickly, and then I'll turn it over to Eric and Shelby at HKS. But we thought about a good location for that stadium that allowed the Rays to continue to play baseball on the site while building the new stadium. And putting it in that corner really allowed us to program the site and the rest of the site in ways that maximize the potential for the community to be involved on a day-to-day basis. Because if you think about baseball, whether it's, and I think the other thing we have to be honest about here is that we don't really know what the Rays are going to do right now. Look, we all know. We all know, we've talked to Matt and Stu and Brian and the team executive leadership and people in the community, but I think the real answer is we don't know if the split season with Canada is really going to be the answer. And so thinking about how do you reprogram the rest of the site so that it's usable and attracts people, even when there may or may not be baseball there. And that's something that we had to think about. So I'll turn it over to HKS real quick and see if they've got any, maybe if people could mute if they're not talking, that would be, that would be helpful. And then maybe turn it over to HKS. Eric or Shelby, you want to give any more thoughts on stadium location?
Yeah, Ken, you did a pretty good job of answering that. And Chris, it's a great question. It's a very challenging question. There's two big facets to what we do with the stadium. One is where do they play, and two is where do we park. It doesn't make sense to keep the existing stadium and steal all their parking. Then it becomes an issue for the rest of the city for a year or two while a new stadium is being built. So one of the things we looked at is, could we build a smaller neighborhood style stadium to the west in the area that is currently a parking lot between the stadium and the highway. We believe we can fit it in. That allows them to continue playing in their existing location as they need to. It does not impact the parking significantly to the point where it would be pushed out into the neighborhoods and create an impact on the neighborhoods or transportation system of the city. So, you know, that's a hypothetical situation. If we put it somewhere on the center of the property or the northeastern portion of the property, then it creates a little bit of an operational challenge that we'd have to work through with the Rays. So just an idea, it's a loose idea. We need to confirm a little bit of it, but we believe that it fits. There was a question yesterday about the stadium design. We're showing it, I'm sure, as most of the teams are, as an open air stadium for now. We understand there's weather issues in St. Petersburg, but if you try and show a domed stadium in renderings, whether you're looking in or whether you're looking out, it takes up a big portion of the rendering without a lot of character. So from an artistic perspective, we're seeing that as an open air stadium right now, but we know we have to address that with the Rays as well.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate that. I was just curious more than anything. So,
Yeah, and one of the other opportunities is to even look at Al Lang Stadium, you know, and Chris, we've talked about that as well. Given the new configuration, there's an opportunity to replace it there and actually have it fit. And with the ownership structure now, including, you know, the Rowdies, you have that opportunity. And then you can seamlessly bring it together with the 85 acres and make it fit, if you will, pulling the city even closer together and making it more inclusive as well. And there's some really unique options there as well.
All right, got time for one or two more questions. Well, thank you very much, Ken. We really appreciate it. Daryl, we appreciate you setting this up short notice. As I said for the last group, there are other opportunities to hear from all four finalists tomorrow night and Thursday night at the Coliseum. I believe it starts at 6 p.m. And they're doing a similar thing, but in person. So that's another opportunity. But you know, again, thank you guys very much for being here. And you know, if there are any other questions, I'll forward them over to you, Daryl, if that's all right.
Yeah, Matt, that would be great. And just remember, as we looked at this, it was important for us to incorporate all the different communities. As you know, I was very involved in helping set up the Innovation Center, building the, you know, Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital, as well as the research park and that we're now operating down there. But also think about what we've structured relative to the arts and how we include that and how it goes down 22nd all the way down to Tangerine Plaza and that 5 acres that the city is engaged with and owns. And the opportunity is to pull all of that together. It's really going to be rather cool. And I think most of y'all given on the chamber know what we're referring to and what the options are there too as well. So again, it's hard to do this on a very short, compressed 30 minutes. But again, we would all like to thank you and appreciate the opportunity. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you all very much.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it, Matt.
Thank
Thanks
you.
a lot.
All right, we're going to move on